Welcome back to the Ryoko Show. I'm so great you're here today because we are about to dive into something that's been a game changer in my life. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about, and maybe you can relate. Today, we are talking about the journey from perfectionism to authenticity. For many years, I believed that perfection was the key to success. I thought that if I could just do things perfectly, whether it was my study, my work, my relationships, or even my self-image, then everything would fall into place. I thought perfection would bring me peace, approval, and fulfillment. But you know what I discovered? Perfectionism is really tiring and it's actually the enemy of growth. It kills creativity, it keeps us stuck, and it makes us focus on what's wrong instead of what's right. And it pulls us away from what truly matters. True success, I've learned, doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from embracing who you are, flaws and all. And when we stop trying to be perfect and start being real, we unlock our true potential. In today's episode, I'm going to share my personal journey from perfectionism to authenticity, what I've learned along the way, and why embracing authenticity is the key to creating a life that feels truly aligned. Have you ever struggled with perfectionism? I know I have. For almost all my life, I thought perfectionism was a virtue. I thought that the more flawless I could make myself, the better I would be at everything. And perfectionism showed up in my studies, my career, in my relationships, and even in my personal life. If something wasn't perfect, I felt like I was a failure. I felt like I had to be the perfect, the always saying the right things, doing the right things, and meeting certain expectations. And when I didn't, it felt like I was letting others down. I put unrealistic, often overwhelming pressure on myself, thinking I have to meet an impossible standard. I remember when I first studied in business school in Montreal, which was a French speaking school, I was so focused on making everything perfect. My presentations, my assignments, and if it wasn't absolutely the best, I would feel like I wasn't good enough. I had this voice in my head telling me, you need to do it better. Give your 200% because your French isn't good enough. Can you relate to that? Maybe you felt that way too, whether it's in your career, your appearance, or even in your personal goals. Perfectionism is this constant chase for an ideal that's elusive and, quite honestly, unattainable and overwhelming, and it leads to burnout. And it never ends. When you achieve one thing, you immediately find something else that needs to be perfect, and it's really exhausting. And the worst part, it keeps you stuck. And here is what I've learned. Perfectionism doesn't serve us. It keeps us in a state of fear and doubt. It makes us second guess every decision. It stops us from taking risks, trying new things, or even studying at all. Perfectionism keeps us in our comfort zone, holding us back from becoming who we are truly meant to be. But this shift happens when we choose to embrace authenticity instead. Authenticity is all about showing up as who you are, no filters and no facades, just you. It's about being honest with yourself about who you are, and where you want to go. When you embrace authenticity, you stop trying to conform to someone else's idea of perfection. We stop pretending to have it all figured out, and instead we allow ourselves to evolve. In my own life, instead of waiting until everything was perfect before launching my podcast, I just started, even when things weren't 100% ready. I realized that perfection wasn't what people needed from me. What they needed was my real self, my experiences, my journey, and my imperfect yet meaningful insights. Once I started showing up that way, I felt a sense of relief and was able to keep going. I also applied to be an assisting member of Jack Canfield's live training last year, even though I didn't feel like I was the perfect candidate. And guess what? I told myself, if I don't apply, I won't get in. And I got in. So that experience reinforced my belief that I didn't need to be perfect to take action and step into new opportunities. And I had a wonderful time assisting Jack during the live training, and I learned so much from other members. So how do you make the shift from perfectionism to authenticity? First, it starts with letting go of the fear of failure. Perfectionism is often rooted in deep fear of not being good enough or failing. But the truth is, failure isn't the end, and failure is often the best teacher. So when we stop fearing failure, we open ourselves up to growth, learning, and progress. Failure to me is never to try. Never give yourself a chance to try and see what happens. When I stopped holding myself to impossible standards, I allowed myself to try and fail. And that's when the real growth began. I was able to try new things without the constant pressure to be perfect. And you know what? I made mistakes, yes, but those mistakes taught me lessons that I could never have learned if I had stayed stuck in the pursuit of perfection. So if you are struggling with perfectionism, ask yourself, what are you really afraid of? What is the worst that could happen if you let go of the need to be perfect? Second, shift your focus from the outcome to the progress. I know it's important to have the end goal, but focus on the progress. When you are caught up in the perfectionism, the focus is always on the end result. And you're constantly aiming for a perfect outcome. And if you don't get there, you feel like you've failed. But when you embrace authenticity, you start to focus more on the journey, the process of growth and learning. For me, this meant showing up more authentically in my business, even if I didn't have everything figured out. It meant being open about my challenges, my journey, and my struggles. And guess what? People appreciated that. They saw me as real, not as someone who had it all together, but someone who was willing to be vulnerable and authentic. And that connection is what truly built trust and allowed me to create a business I love, and also gives others permission to show up as who they are. And finally, embrace imperfection as beauty. There is something magical that happens when you let go of perfectionism, allow yourself to be imperfect. It's like you give yourself permission to be human and to make mistakes and to learn from them. You also give yourself permission to show up just as you are without the need for validation or approval from others. One of the most freeing things I've ever done is allow myself to be imperfect, embrace the messiness of life. I've learned that my imperfections are what make me unique and relatable. They make me real, and being real is what connects us to others. Now I want to ask you, what is one area in your life where you can embrace authenticity over perfection? Maybe it's in your work, letting go of the pressure to be perfect and just getting started on the project, even if it's messy. Or maybe it's in your personal life, showing up as your true self in your relationship instead of trying to be the person you think others want you to be. Authenticity is a powerful thing. When you embrace it, you create space for growth, connection, and real success. You stop chasing an unattainable ideal, and instead you start living fully and authentically. And as we wrap up today's episode, I want to encourage you to reflect on one area in your life where you can let go of perfectionism and step into authentic self. It's a small step, but it can create huge shifts in your life. Well, thank you so much for being there with me today. I hope this episode has inspired you to let go of perfectionism and start embracing the beauty of your authentic self. Remember, true success doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being real. And if you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review and share it with someone who might benefit from hearing this message. And as always, if you are ready to go deeper into embracing authenticity, creating a life that truly reflects who you are, go to the show note and grab a free guide to build inner world foundation so that your outer world starts to change. Until next time, remember, you are enough just the way you are and keep shining.